So last year I did a video revolving around Nickelodeon and their wonderful way of showing us that they can make money and not care about animation. Did anything change this year? Well, yes and no, and I plan to cover that right now. I just want to say I do have an Instagram that I post different polls, fun facts, mini reviews, updates, or fan art around my channel. So if you love animation and you have an Instagram account, check me out at The Alpha J Show and see if it's something you'd like to follow. One trend I noticed with Nickelodeon is that it does better in terms of numbers than Cartoon Network and Disney Channel. According to a recent report, Nickelodeon, despite having a 25% decrease in ratings, is still the top network for children 2 to 11 with a higher rating average than both Disney and Cartoon Network, which kind of makes sense. The vulnerability with Cartoon Network is that its shows have a tendency to be watched by an older audience than 11, going into young adults. Not only that, but with live action, you can do things such as hire people who look really good for a target demographic, like Nickelodeon has done with Henry Danger. It's kind of hard to do that with KO, for example, as lovable as he is. So because of this, Nickelodeon takes advantage of this spot by producing shows that Cartoon Network would have a harder time showing. It's why you can watch SpongeBob at such a young age, but I'd imagine a 4-year-old wouldn't understand much of what's going on in Regular Show, Adventure Time, Steven Universe, OKKO, or even Summer Camp Island. Look at shows like The Loud House or The Adventures of Kid Danger. Yes, the former has arcs, but these arcs are generally simple, like a couple arc and nothing in the same universe as Steven. So if you ever want to know why Nickelodeon doesn't have their own quote-unquote Adventure Time, animation, or story-wise, it is because they don't need to, for the audience that they're going for. Plus, your 5-year-old brother is more likely to want merchant apps for it than your 25-year-old full-time college student, so again it proves that making things for kids is highly profitable. This isn't to say that there isn't obstacles in its direction, but the competition surely is lower when we put it in the scope of the big 3 networks. So let's examine the shows that pretty much went the way of the dodo. To continue off my last video, if you want a TLDR, Bunsen is a Beast didn't even last a single season before being pushed to Nicktoons. I didn't think the show's concept was all that appealing, and splitting your effort between a dying show with an all-time horrible season and a show that's barely getting off the ground for being essentially the Denzel Crocker show, with a discount Denzel Crocker and substitute fairies, isn't really grounds for thinking that Hartman creatively has the potential to create shows that differ from each other. But considering another candidate down the list, I guess Nickelodeon doesn't have the biggest problem with this. The show ended on February 10th, 2018, 10 days before its anniversary. However, it should be noted that 10 of its 26 whole episodes aired on Nicktoons, with a 4-month hiatus between. And to add on top of that, 9 of those 10 episodes were squished into the last month of December, with the finale coming out months after. So it's safe to say that they didn't treat Bunsen as a Beast with the smoothness of other shows that they may have in the past. Before I go on, I also want to center in on the creator, Butch Hartman. He created 4 shows for Nickelodeon: The Fairly OddParents, Danny Phantom, Tough Puppy, and Bunsen is a Beast. Danny Phantom and Tough Puppy were gone well before 2018, but Fairly OddParents would actually go away just a year before, and both shows followed a similar pattern. The last season was filled with a lot of erratic release patterns. The show ended with horrible episodes, and it pulled desperate tactics for a short-term gain. I don't know where the tie was severed between the long-term commitment of Butch Hartman's services and Nickelodeon, but it did surprise me that Bunsen is a Beast didn't get that classic, hey, let's give you 2 to 3 seasons because you're a long-time guy treatment. Butch Hartman would part ways with Nickelodeon in order to establish his own network to put shows on, and I guess from there on we're just playing the waiting game with him. You also have that Kuku Harajuku show, and yes, that also went to Nick Jr., I think. It has passed through many hands in the production. There's Miraculous Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir, which was promptly moved to Netflix, which is probably a better move than many shows could have. There's Mysticons, another show I talked about in the last video, which started with a 5-day premiere on Nickelodeon, but was shoved to Nicktoons swiftly, and then also Nick Jr. But technically it has graphic novels coming out still, so I hope that fans are happy there. So as you can see, the pattern here is that a lot of these shows were pushed to Nicktoons where, and I will continue to say this, there's a significantly smaller audience, which makes it harder to prove that people like it, which creates a loop of doing worse and worse and not fulfilling the potential it has. What does Nickelodeon replace all of these shows with? SpongeBob, The Loud House, Henry Danger, Paw Patrol. To which research shows that these shows dominate the channel, but more on that later. At least the first 2. So now that the easy shows are out of the room, let's talk about the 2 shows that Nickelodeon seriously dropped the ball on. Welcome to the Wayne and The Adventures of Kid Danger. Welcome to the Wayne was boring to me. It It's one of the very few reviews that I remember not having the best time writing, but I wanted to do it anyway. It had a slightly unappealing art style, and the beginning episode gets more and more boring the more I thought about it. The show had a solid million views from July to September of 2017, with its last episode of that year having a 1.21 rating. To give context, just a year after, the crossover Nexus would get a 0.76 rating, which is under a million first of all, but it proves how much TV is dying. Now, I have absolutely no idea what happened to Welcome to the Wane, but it went on a year hiatus in the middle of its first season, going from their last and best rated episode in September of 2017 to their lowest reported rating, October of 2018, in which they aired 11 new episodes within 11 days. Think about that for a second. They went from getting a million views per episode to barely 60,000. But it gets even sadder. They air Welcome to the Wane in days of 4, and upon hiatus, aired new episodes of the show in chunks of 5 episodes. I know I personally didn't like the show, but there hasn't been a sadder release schedule this year than Welcome to the Wane. Now let's go back to what I noted before about the 2 to 11 demographic. Would a large majority of this 2 to 11 demographic be interested in this mystery-based story-heavy show that it was offering? Sure, if the story was right, but it wasn't, and there wasn't an audience gravitating towards it, opposed to like a Loud House or a SpongeBob. I don't know if it's getting another season, and even if it did, it wouldn't do well, and I would imagine it wouldn't be funded well. Then you have the other show that's out because of the success of a more popular show, The Adventures of Kid Danger, which if you want to know my complete thoughts on, just check out this video. This series was made to complement the main series Henry Danger, which has been just as popular if not a little under SpongeBob, to which Nickelodeon has clutched onto it for relevance. The animated show is a, TLDR, cheap, shameless way to cash in on a much more successful pairing. The stories are somehow absolutely mind-numbingly simple but still flawed, that it might as well have been a Henry Danger episode. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a Henry Danger episode that they copied into their animated series. Now, the show has had 12 episodes airing between the period of January to June of this year, and it just stopped. And I wonder why. It couldn't have to do with how Dan Snyder got the boot, and what's inside it apparently. Yes, Dan Snyder, longtime employee of Nickelodeon and creator of many shows, in a similar fashion to the Loud House creator Chris Savino, was given the pink slip, which caused both this show and Henry Danger to be in an awkward position. With Henry Danger, I understand more if they kept it because it's super popular, it's actually keeping up with the Goliath SpongeBob. With this show, if they feel salty for footing the bill for such an awful show to come out of the Snyder's Bakery, then it should serve as a reminder to demonstrate some cold feet when it comes to clearly bad ideas. Like Welcome to the Wane, I don't have any idea if it's gonna get another season. It very well may because the live action show is doing well, but it very well may not if reviving the show means pouring money into something that doesn't make as much money, and we all know Viacom loves money. So this leaves a few animated shows that have survived this far. So let's make our way up to the big guys slowly. We have Alvin and the Chipmunks, which because of its easy to air nature, has survived based purely off of name value and not episode quality at all. Some, count it, some episodes are okay, and I hope to get around to it, but it simply isn't helping Nickelodeon appear to innovate and stay on top as a giant in animation. They air Alvin and the Chipmunks a lot more consistently than The Adventures of Kid Danger and Welcome to the Wane, so that should show you what generally gets a better hand. The only other Nicktoons that are currently on Nickelodeon up to this point are the Loud House, Rise of the TMNT, and SpongeBob. Rise of the TMNT was teased in 2017, and it came out this year with great reception, including myself. It has quirky animation and shows a lot of effort, which I enjoy. In a press statement before it came out, the Nickelodeon president said, and I quote, "The Turtles is a property that has reinvention in its DNA, which keeps it fresh and relevant to every new generation while satisfying the demand from its adult fans. Turtles has been an incredibly important franchise for us since we reignited it 5 years ago, and we're excited for the new series to take the characters in a different direction with more humor, a younger and lighter feel, and all new dimensions to explore." End quote. This is true. Aside from people wondering why April is black, even though it is said that she has before, I really don't care. It's fun, it's fresh, and I hope it does as good as it could. It's aired quite consistently and does okay in the era of dying TV. The Loud House is a success story with many obstacles in its path. For instance, the creator. And I'm not sure if it was because of the amount of characters in the show that different people can relate to, or the fact that there was instant shipping chemistry once you saw each sister, but regardless, the show, as great as it is, keeps the ratings that other shows would otherwise tank within their 3rd season. Now to be fair, The Loud House's third season isn't as strong as its first two, but their worst season is better than a lot of Nickelodeon's best seasons as far as later ones go. The Loud House exploded in popularity even to the point where its community is a separate entity aside from Nickelodeon and animation. It's so big that it has its own bottom feeders that use clickbait and fake Loud House photos or obvious fan art to bait the young fans or older but wanting to hate on certain things viewers into making Loud House clickbait a viable option this year. But on the bright side, Nickelodeon announced that they are working on a Loud House movie, which makes me very happy, considering the love that 2D animation needs coming this year, that a Loud House movie should be able to garner, alongside a Steven Universe movie and a Bob's Burgers movie, movies that will be coming from television animation. I want to make sure I support these films fully. Not only this, but in Henry Danger fashion, a spin-off was formed and announced titled Los Casagrandes. Apologies if I butchered that. That will, and this is a quote, follow Lincoln Loud's friend Ronnie Ann and Bobby Santiago as they adjust to their new life in the city, where they now live with their big, loving, chaotic, multi-generational family, the Casagrandes, end quote. The Loud House does really well for itself, and I see it thriving in 2019, as the second big animation show for Nickelodeon. Now let's talk about The Big Sponge. The show has done pretty okay, as one of the biggest animated shows out there in the era of dying TV. I gotta keep saying that. Surprisingly, when you compare its ratings to The Loud House, they seem to be similar. In fact, between the two, SpongeBob had the lowest episode premiere of Chef Bob, which, wow, it ended up getting a 1.04. The Loud House's lowest premiere was Middlemen, with a 1.08. So not drastically far, but you'd expect SpongeBob to be a powerhouse. SpongeBob has always been a self-sustaining show, with many longtime members being a big part of why it works. But contrary to popular belief, the late great Stephen Hillenburg, creator of the show, was reported to have input on the show even before season 9, when he came back. Now there has been a debate on if the show should continue despite the creator not being there. Comment down below which side you're on. Considering the Adventures of Kid Danger, considering The Loud House, considering Rise of the TMNT, all of these other animated shows that are on alongside The Loud House, I don't think Nickelodeon has a huge issue with separating the origin of a creation and just moving on with the intellectual property. Expect SpongeBob to be on either Simpsons style, running it for as long as they can, or go the way of Scooby-Doo or Tom and Jerry and end up making several incarnations that don't stick. To say that SpongeBob is doing well is like saying the sky is blue. Technically, yes. Seeing that Nickelodeon is still pulling in million viewer ratings in this era with SpongeBob says that they're taking the hit strategically and making sure that their figurehead show still does well, and it does. But at the same time, are they keeping it to television when a big switch to maybe a subscription-based service or app would revitalize it in this new digital age? Well, Nickelodeon has made bigger mistakes before, so we'll see going into the year. Before the age of having a ton of games in your pocket, the shift of where you'd find games seemed to be on a system that also didn't serve as a way to make phone calls and text messages. One of the best places to go was Nick.com. Currently, if you go there seems to be a lot of redirect links to apps for games rather than games on the website, and also the Nick.com app for you to watch shows on rather than having the videos on the website. And I'm kind of torn on how I feel about that. There's no use keeping something that's dying for obvious reason. If there are more people using the app and playing Nickelodeon games on their phones, then sure, but at the same time, it seems really weird that on the website front, they're quick to adapt to the new times, but on the television content front, they change as fast as tectonic plates. That's slow for anybody out there. But unlike other networks, they have a 90s Nick box, which I have 4 of. I hope to do something with it. They stream 90s Nick shows on their VRV partnered network, and 90s Nick has been something they prominently featured on social media. Out of each network, they do really fine when it comes to old properties. So what's the status of Nickelodeon in 2018 when it comes to animation? They're definitely limping because of the departure of many longtime talent. Their website has been reduced to redirect links, and their biggest television shows still being on a platform that's dying doesn't seem too well for the future. But they're still in first place, with a lot of these entities being super popular. Their attention to their older stuff is well presented, which I appreciate, and at least some of their new projects look very worthwhile. Definitely looking forward to stuff like Glitch Techs. I'd say Nickelodeon isn't doing as bad as I thought, but they are nowhere near the giant they could be in the animation world. They just know that if they take the 2 to 11 route and do live action, which is an easier, less competitive market at their scale, they can still be one of the big 3, just cheaper. But what do you guys think of Nickelodeon in 2018? Has your opinion went up or down as you heard different things throughout this video? What do you think they can do to improve in this new year? year? All of these questions answer down in the comments down below. I read as many comments as I can. Special thanks to the patrons of January, and if you like what I do, check out Patreon for a neat way to support this panda in making these videos, which is completely optional. As always guys, take care. Alpha out.